Hi everyone, welcome back to the Life Quest channel. Or if you're new here, I'm Sunny, and for today's video, I'll talk briefly about strategy and strategic management, and then I'll walk you through the steps of strategic planning. Like I mentioned in an earlier video, people have been asking me about strategy and strategic management because they said they would like to run strategic planning events in their organizations without an external facilitator first. The challenge, however, is most of them that ask don't know how to do it. Knowing how to facilitate strategic planning could be a game changer for your career. As far as I know, few people have this skill. So, if you're a planning specialist in a large organization, a business or management consultant, a startup founder, or an entrepreneur, this video might help you. For starters, let's understand the definition of the word strategy. In his book, Strategic Management, Frank Rothermel wrote that a strategy is the set of goal-directed actions a firm takes to gain and sustain superior performance relative to competitors. Let's break down this definition. First, a strategy has a specific goal that it intends to realize. Second, a strategy is comprised of several related or unified actions that have to be taken to achieve the goal. And third, a strategy enables an entity to acquire a competitive advantage. That is, a way of doing something far, far better than how competitors do it. For an example, let's take a look at Zara, one of the most famous fast fashion brands in the world. The fast fashion industry serves its target markets by churning out garments of a wide variety of designs continuously and rapidly, such that their consumers are encouraged to buy more frequently than usual. As I understand it, Zara's overall goal is to be the fastest fast fashion retailer that's also committed to environmental sustainability. With this goal in mind, Zara has taken several actions to achieve it. One action Zara has adopted is to integrate its operations vertically. This means that Zara manages virtually all of its design, production, shipment, and marketing activities in-house. With its vast and virtually complete control of its value chain activities, Zara has been able to create efficiencies that allow it to get new clothes out of its design studios and into its retail stores very, very rapidly. Another action that Zara has taken is to use a rapid product replacement policy. This policy requires Zara to change clothing designs quickly to adapt to changing demands for certain clothing styles. It also encourages Zara patrons to buy garments faster because they would think that if they find something they like today, they better buy it today because it could be gone by the next day. A third action that Zara has taken is to reduce its adverse environmental impact. Zara did so by reducing electrical consumption in all of its locations, recycling furniture and other store decorations, and using organic manufacturing processes, among many other specific steps. Taken all together, Zara's actions were designed to make the brand the fastest fast fashion retailer that also is environmentally sustainable. These actions have enabled it to generate sales turnovers that are much higher than those of its closest competitors like H&M and Forever 21. And so, one can say that Zara has acquired a competitive advantage over its competitors. Now, let's understand the nature of strategic management. Fred David, another author of strategic management, wrote that strategic management is the art and science of formulating, implementing, and evaluating cross-functional decisions that enable an organization to achieve its objectives. Obviously, from David's definition, strategic management has three stages. The first stage is strategy formulation. The second stage is strategy implementation. And the third stage is strategy evaluation. In strategy formulation, which is the first stage, the organization develops vision and mission statements that are the anchor points for the rest of its strategic plan. These statements are very important because they serve as the ultimate criteria for any decisions to be made by the organization. Basically, an organization shouldn't even consider decisions that aren't aligned with both its vision and mission statements. After vision and mission statements are crafted, 4 factors are identified so that the organization will have a comprehensive picture of its business environment. 2 of these factors are opportunities and threats, which are found in the external environment of the organization. The other two factors are strengths and weaknesses, which are found in the internal environment of the organization. Once the four factors have been determined, the next steps in strategy formulation are to establish long-term objectives and to generate alternative strategies. Finally, from among the generated alternative strategies, the organization chooses the alternative that it believes will benefit itself the most. In strategy implementation, which is the second stage, the organization establishes annual objectives and creates policies and processes that are used to implement its chosen strategy. Also in this stage, the organization develops a culture that is supportive of its strategy. If necessary, the organization also examines its organizational structure and modifies it to make itself more effective at implementing strategy. Other tasks like redirecting marketing campaigns, setting budgets, building information systems, motivating employees, and designing performance-based compensation systems are taken on by the organization in the implementation stage. In strategy evaluation, which is the third stage, the organization concerns itself with finding out if its strategic plan is working or not. Thus, it periodically reviews its external and internal factors, measures performance, and takes corrective action. So, why is strategic planning needed in an organization? What are its benefits? The major benefit of strategic planning is it provides the organization a structured and logical methodology for designing its future. With a procedure to follow, most organizations find it very easy to come up with strategic decisions that they are comfortable supporting. Without such a procedure, organizations often end up with a strategic plan that they're not very confident of. They feel that plans arising from unstructured discussions of possibilities don't stand on solid ground. A second benefit of strategic planning is it enhances communication among the leaders and staff of the organization. These leaders and staff are given the opportunity to participate in dialogues and discussions, and as a consequence, vital information that impacts the organization's growth is freely shared. When information flows unhampered throughout the organization, both leaders and staff gain a deeper understanding of what the organization is doing and why. In turn, this translates to a stronger commitment to work for the success of the organization. A third benefit of strategic planning is it helps an organization become more financially successful. Studies have shown that companies that practice systematic strategic planning tend to be more profitable and productive than companies that don't. Such companies most probably are able to anticipate environmental changes well and modify their strategies to adapt appropriately to these changes. On the other hand, companies that don't do strategic planning at all are unable to see future possibilities clearly and so end up reacting to environmental changes with dire consequences. Strategic planning has many other benefits. In fact, too many to cover in just one video. So, as I create more videos about strategic planning, I'll mention these other benefits. That's why it pays to subscribe to our channel. Okay, so how does one facilitate a strategic planning event in an organization? Step number 1, determine who will be part of the planning team. Obviously, the founders or top leaders of the organization should be part of the planning team because they're the ones that have the greatest interest in the future of the organization. Now, it's really up to them how much of the leadership structure they would like to have involved in planning. For some of my clients, their top leaders decided to get everyone from the top down to the supervisor level involved. For my other clients, they thought it was best to involve only their leaders from middle management and up. Step number 2, once the planning team has been assembled, orient your planning team on the strategic planning process that will be followed. Ensure that everyone in the team understands what will be going on and what will be expected of them. You could run this orientation as a workshop, especially if it's going to be the first time for the planning team members to do strategic planning. Step number 3, gather information about the environment of the organization to help the planning team with its task of formulating strategy. 2 kinds of information are needed. The first kind consists of information about the external environment of the organization. Examples of such information are economic data, political and legal developments, socio-demographic trends, technological developments, and competitor analysis. The second kind of information is about the internal environment of the organization. This information points out where the strengths and weaknesses of the organization are. Included are product line and mix information, marketing campaigns, pricing strategies, the state of organizational logistics, production policies, inventory levels, human resources, and financial data. You can assemble all of this information into one file and provide each member of the planning team a copy of this file so that they can read ahead of the actual strategic planning event. Step number 4, design the planning timeline so that the planning team will be very clear on what amount of time commitment will be required of them. It's always good to already calendar the various steps of the strategic planning process way ahead so that the members of your planning team can schedule their other work activities around the planning schedules. In this way, you can ensure the attendance of all planning team members to virtually all of the planning sessions. Step number 5. In the first planning session, have the planning team review the organization's purpose, vision, mission, and value statements, if these have already been developed. The aim of the exercise is to determine if these statements are still aligned with what the top leaders of the organization want. If they are, then the planning team moves to the next step. If not, then the planning team will have to spend some time rehashing all or maybe just one or two of these statements. If the organization hasn't developed yet its purpose, vision, mission, and value statements, then conduct a workshop for the top leaders of the organization to craft these. Writing out purpose, vision, mission, and value statements has a lot of subtasks involved, and so it will be difficult to discuss all of these subtasks in a single video. So I'll create another video focusing solely on them. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and tap the bell below for you to be notified once a new video is up. Step number 6. In the next planning session, set the overall goals of the organization for the next few years. Deciding on how far into the future the organization should look depends on its top leaders. Some are comfortable working with only the next 3 to 5 years, while others are keen on looking well into the future, like 10 years or further. So get your top leaders to decide on the time frame that will be used for setting of overall goals. Step number 7. After overall goals have been set, facilitate a discussion on the strengths and weaknesses of the organization. Make sure that the planning team members are using the information you had gathered for them, and warn them against making assumptions about strengths and weaknesses. The team must identify real strengths and real weaknesses, factors that are verifiable through the information you had gathered. Don't let them settle on superficial factors. If you notice that the planning team is highlighting a strength or a weakness based on perception, call their attention to it and get them to dig deeper. For example, many of my clients like to say that being the first one in their industry is a strength. Of course, being the first one is a great source of pride for the organization, but it certainly isn't a real source of strength. Being the first one merely points out that the organization was the first to open, but it doesn't say exactly what the strength of the organization is. If you encounter something like this, keep encouraging the planning team to critique their own assumptions so that they are able to uncover the real strengths and weaknesses of the organization. An example of a good strength factor is the organization has an extensive, internally controlled network of warehouses and trucking routes covering the targeted geographic area, making it easy for the organization to rapidly serve the stocking needs of its distributors, dealers, and retailers. An example of a good weakness factor is the organization is cash-strapped compared to its competitors, thus limiting its ability to scale up operations and compete head-on. Step number 8, facilitate a discussion on the opportunities and threats that the organization is facing. Ideally, do this next step as another planning session separate from that where the planning team brainstorm about strengths and weaknesses. This will give time for the planning team to rest and restore brain power. Remember, Strategic planning requires a lot of deep thinking and reflection, which is often very exhausting. Again, encourage the planning team members to use the information you had gathered for them. Lead them away from making assumptions about perceived opportunities and threats. Make sure they're uncovering real external factors. Here's an example of a perceived opportunity that isn't really an opportunity until it's fully validated. Some of my clients like to say that a growing market is an opportunity. However, this is a factor that is very vague and is difficult to act upon. If your planning team states something like this, get them to dig deeper. Ask questions like, is the growth found in a particular segment of the market? Is the growth coming from mere growth in the population, or is it coming from increased purchasing power of the market segment being referred to? Could the growth be just an uptick, maybe coming from seasonal factors, or does it look like it's going to be sustained? An example of a good opportunity factor is middle-income families are generally moving to residential areas south of Metro Manila, resulting to a purchasing power growth of around 20% per year in these areas and making them accessible to us through our chain of stores in these same areas. An example of a good threat factor is the largest mall chain in the Philippines has started constructing a new mall just beside ours with leasable floor space 3 times that of ours, thus threatening to pull consumer traffic away from us starting next year. Step 9. Perform a SWOT analysis. That's SWOT analysis. It will be better for the planning team to do this as a separate planning session, as this task will require significant time to complete. In this step, lead your planning team into examining possible connections among the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats factors they've come up with. One way to do this is to ask the team to reflect on the following questions. Letter A. Which strengths of ours should we use to exploit which opportunities? Letter B. Which strengths of ours should we use to neutralize or avoid which threats? Letter C. Which opportunities should we exploit to get rid of or reduce which weaknesses of ours? And finally, letter D. What further actions could we take to simultaneously neutralize or avoid which threats and get rid or reduce which weaknesses of ours? Step number 10. Formulate alternative strategy options based on the SWOT analysis. After completing the SWOT analysis, your planning team will probably have several or even a lot of strategy options listed. The goal of this step then is to see how this extensive list can be reduced into a shorter list of meaningful strategic options for the organization. This will be your main responsibility as a planning facilitator. One thing you can do to shorten the list is to lead the planning team in identifying options that are the same or similar. Another exercise you can run is to ask the planning team to examine which options can be combined. There are other tools in addition to SWOT analysis that could help with this step. Some of these tools are the Strategic Position and Action Evaluation Matrix, the Boston Consulting Group Matrix, the Internal-External Matrix, and the Grand Strategy Matrix. If you wish to know more about these other tools, you can read Fred David's book on strategic management, or you can watch out for the videos that I will be creating to explain these same tools. Step number 11. Choose the best strategy and determine the first set of short-term organizational goals. We reached the final decision to be made in the strategy formulation stage, and that is selecting the strategy option that is most appropriate for the organization. Ideally, your goal is to get the members of the planning team to be unanimous in their choice of the final strategy. Having unanimity is good because it will lead to complete buy-in and solid commitment to the chosen strategy. Choosing the final strategy can be done through a healthy discussion of the pros and cons of each strategy option. It can also be done methodically by using a tool such as the Quantitative Strategic Planning Matrix, which uses a weights and scoring process to rank the strategy options. Once the final strategy has been chosen, you should now lead the planning team into setting the organizational goals for, let's say, the next year or two. Step number 12, examine the current structure of the organization. Have the planning team review the current organizational structure to see if it can support the final strategy. If the team feels that the organizational structure isn't appropriate for the final strategy, then have them identify what is required of the structure for it to effectively support the final strategy. For example, suppose the organization decides to pursue an intensive market penetration strategy by using online platforms and tools. With this strategy, the organization must have a well-equipped digital marketing capability. Now, if the organization doesn't have this at the moment, then the planning team will have to address some questions like, A, should the digital marketing department be part of the overall marketing department of the organization, or should it be a separate department? B, to whom in the senior management team should the digital marketing department report? C, what will be the size of this department and how should it be equipped so that it can effectively carry out its main role? And D, who should lead this department? Step number 13, communicate the final strategy to the various departments of the organization and develop departmental plans. In this step, you will now be dealing more with the departmental leaders of the organization. Now, there are several sub-steps that need to be executed here. First, have the planning team present the final strategy and how it was arrived at to the department leaders. After the presentation, confirm that the departmental leaders understand the final strategy perfectly. Second, get the department leaders to set their short-term departmental goals. Make sure that their short-term departmental goals contribute to the achievement of the short-term organizational goals. Third, have the departments develop plans or actions that would achieve their short-term departmental goals. Fourth, lead the departments with determining the resources they require for their plans and setting up budgets for approval by senior management. Step number 14, polish the organizational strategy and the supporting departmental plans. Lead your planning team through a planning gap exercise. In this exercise, your planning team will see if there are conflicts or contradictions among the departmental plans or between departmental plans and the final strategy. The team will also have to determine if there are organizational goals or areas of the final strategy that have been missed out by the departmental plans. And as the last activity, get your planning team to do a risk assessment of the plans so that it can prepare contingency plans to address identified risk. All right, I think this is the right time to make this announcement. We're going to run a webinar on how to conduct your own strategic planning event. It's going to be on January 12, 2023 from 1 p.m. until 4 p.m. In this webinar, I'll show you how to prepare for a strategic planning event and how to conduct the event itself. If you're a startup, a small business owner or entrepreneur, a planning specialist in a larger organization, or even if you simply wish to plan for your personal future, I encourage you to attend. Go to our website at lifequestphilippines.com to register for this webinar. Remember, learning never stops. So to make sure your learning keeps going, like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Remember to click on the bell below so you'll get notified as soon as my next video is up. Please follow us too on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Google Business. All of the links to our social media accounts are in the video description below. If you want to inquire about any of our services, do email us at info@lifequestphilippines.com. That's info@lifequestphilippines.com. We entertain inquiries only to this email address, so please get in touch with us through it. One more thing, if you have suggestions or topics that you wish to learn about, kindly comment below and I'll make a video about it. And lastly, visit our website at lifequestphilippines.com. In my next video, I'll talk about whether small organizations can benefit from strategic planning. Some of my clients believe that strategic planning is only for large corporations or enterprises, but that is so far from the truth. Even small businesses and entities can benefit from strategic planning for as long as it's done properly. So if you want to know how small organizations can get the best out of strategic planning, watch my next video. Have an awesome time learning.